Hello, welcome back to our cricket podcast with myself, Dan, and I make cricket videos on the internet, and the professional cricketer amongst the two of us, Joe Gardner. Welcome back, Joe. How are you? How's things? What's new? A few more points on the board.
Hello, Dan. Yes, good to be back. A few points on the board. Yeah, we've picked up. So we won our first game back in the Rachel Carey Flint, and then yesterday got rained out, which is just ridiculous, really, isn't it? When it's July, but 2 points. So yeah, 6 points. I think we're still in second or joint second. I think with Diamonds now, but yeah, couple more games before the break. So hopefully get at least one win, and that'll kind of hopefully cement us in the top four. But yeah, not too bad at all. How are you?
Happy days. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I'm glad to be home for a day, which is exciting. I saw Northants win yesterday in an interesting game of cricket against Durham. But hey, it all counted. It's another win. It's another couple of points. And I think Northants are third now. And hopefully we might be talking about a quarter-final, which would be quite exciting. And then I go to Sidmouth tomorrow to play a game of cricket on a Tuesday, which would be good, right down on the seaside in Devon. And then I come back home Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I haven't yet decided whether I want to see if I can try and go to the first test up at Lord's on said Thursday or Friday. I think I do. Or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, in fact, isn't it? Because Wednesday's day one. I think I do want to. And I'm kind of swaying towards it, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe this podcast will just kind of just help my appetite slightly towards it, because we're going to talk about the England versus West Indies Test Series, which starts on the 10th of July. England haven't played Test cricket since the India tour, which was, started well and then kind of went downhill pretty quickly. And that was in March, wasn't it? That was way back in March. And the West Indies haven't played Test cricket, as we learnt the other week when we spoke to Josh De Silva, back in, when the bloody hell was that series?
January?
That was
January. Yeah.
The end of January 2024. So that's either is the fact that neither of these two teams like playing Test cricket, or it's a nod to the fact that the calendar just doesn't really have space in it for red ball cricket. But we got 3 tests, Joe. We got 3 test matches against the West Indies at home in July, and that's good.
It is. It absolutely is. It feels like it's a late one, doesn't it? First test of the summer this year, because of obviously the World Cup and everything. But I have no doubt that the crowd at Lord's, weather permitting, will be an absolute howl. It will be fantastic. And I'm right in thinking that the Barmy Army are being let into Lord's for the first time for Jimmy's final test, aren't they? So they're only going to add a bit of atmosphere with the trumpeter and everything that they get around. So I'm looking forward to tuning in this week.
It's quite mad, isn't it, to think that everything that the Barmy Army do and bring to England cricket, this will be the first time that formally they've been allowed into Lord's, which is mind-blowing. That obviously members of the Barmy Army have been to Lord's before, they've watched cricket there before, but never as an entity, never with a trumpet, never with the kind of the section where the noise will come from. But that's good. And 3 tests, as you said, the first one's at Lord's, that's on Wednesday, 10th of July. Then it's Nottingham on the 18th of July up at Trent Bridge. And then finally Edgbaston on the 26th of July. So it is 3 back-to-back test matches against the West Indies. And then I think it's Sri Lanka after that for another 3 tests. So we haven't had test cricket for a while, but then we get 6 pretty quick succession. But you've mentioned it, and it is going to be the end of James Anderson's test career for certain. Has he formally said that that's the end of his cricket career?
I don't think he has, Obviously, we saw him turn out for Lancashire last week in the Championship, just as a little bit of a warm-up for him, I assume. And yeah, he didn't go too badly there, did he? Who knows? Maybe he'll come out after the test match and say whether or not he's retiring. But I mean, I think he could still very much compete if he fancied another year in the Championship, much like Alistair Cook did for a few years.
Yeah, I know you've got a load of numbers. I've done some, and mine are very, very kind of basic, and I suspect that you've probably trumped me on all of them, but it will be 7,721 days or 21 years between Jimmy's Test debut against Zimbabwe at Lord's in May 2003. It'll be his 188th Test match for England. 700 wickets, Test wickets, which puts him third on the all-time list of wicket takers. He's got Shane Warne in his sights. He would need 9 wickets across 2 innings at Lord's on a week that's going to be pretty cloudy and overcast, and it's been wet, and the pitch is probably going to be green, which would take him to 709 and would take him past Shane Warne's 708 and would put him in second place. He hasn't played cricket for 116 days since the end of that India tour at Dharmashala. Turns up for Lancashire, plays 1 game of cricket 116 days later, takes 735 versus Notts at Southport for Lancashire. I mean, as I say, I know you've got more numbers. You've got more numbers to make him sound even more impressive than that. So over to you, but what a cricketer this bloke is.
Yeah, he's fantastic, isn't he? His record speaks for itself. And yeah, he's internationally for England, he's got 987 wickets. Right, so if he was to get 13 of the 20 that England will be gunning for at Lord's, he'd finish his career with 1,000 international wickets. Now that is like absurd, an absurd amount of wickets. He's taken 119 wickets in 28 tests at Lord's, and he's one of only 4 people to have taken 100 plus wickets at a single venue. So I guess on the theme of winning at certain venues, that kind of draws into Lewis Hamilton's win at Silverstone yesterday. He was breaking records in the Grand Prix. Murali took over 100 wickets at 3 different venues, just for context. So, like, again, unbelievable numbers around those kind of leading test match wicket bowlers. Stuart Broad did also take 113 wickets at Lord's, so between the pair of them, we know how good they are. As a pair, those two, 138 matches. So out of his 187 test matches that he's played so far, he's played 138 of them with Broady, and they took over 1,000 wickets, 1,034 wickets between them. But one of the most intriguing things that I kind of found when I was doing this little bit of statistical analysis this morning was how we know how he's matured like a fine wine, and his record is still remarkable at the age of 41 as he is now. But since turning 35, he's taken 220 wickets, right? And if you split his career into, so when he made his debut in 2003 up to 2013, he took 340 wickets, at an average of 30.61. Now, when you get into the 30s and you're talking about unbelievable test match bowlers, I mean, that doesn't sound astonishing, does it? If his average is in the 30s. But from 2014, when he was 31 and had at this time already played 91 tests, so he's got a few tests in his legs, the old boy, to now, he's taken another 360 wickets, which obviously takes him to that 700, at an average of 22.67. So between the first part of his career and the second part of his career, he decreased his bowling average by about 8 run points, which is remarkable. And in the most recent time, I'll break it down again, since 2020, he's taken 123 wickets at an average of just over 24. Jimmy is the GOAT. Yeah,
he's so good. And the thing is, you can make numbers say anything you want. Like you can manipulate statistics, and you can break them down to show whatever you want, and you'll come up with different kind of answers and different analogies and maybe different players. But the thing is whichever way you try and break those numbers down, James Anderson is always going to be there. He's always going to be in the conversation. You can never, ever discredit him. Yes, there'll be arguments and say that Dale Steyn was a better cricketer. My argument back to that would be Dale Steyn couldn't keep himself on the field as frequently as what James Anderson did. And from a fan's perspective, my thought about being a professional athlete is the ability to be able to play. You're a much better cricketer when you're sat on the sideline and not actually competing. Similarly, people can come up with conversations in recent time and go, well, Pat Cummins has been a better cricketer. There will be bowlers that have had better periods. But the reality of the situation is that over 21 years, James Anderson has been the consistent. There has been nobody that's done it for as long as he has. There would be arguments to say that maybe he did it for a little bit too long. There would have been there's been chances that maybe the people have gone, is it time to hang up the boots? Andrew Strauss tried to kill his career in 2022 before they went to the West Indies and didn't pick him and Broad. But he's done it. 7,721 days later, he's got all of those numbers and all of those statistics that you've just run through, and no other seam bowling cricketer has ever got them. And I'd be prepared to put a decent sum of money on the fact that no seam bowler is going to get near those kind of numbers again.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I don't think they are going to get anywhere close. And also, another one, the amount of balls that he's bowled, right? 39,877 in test matches. So that means that if he bowls 20.3 overs in this test match that starts on Wednesday, he would have bowled 40,000 balls in test match cricket.
That's wild, isn't it?
And also, in doing so, if he gets to his 21st over in this test match, he would have hit 50,000 international balls bowled. Now that just sounds like pain. Yeah. But for Jimmy, it's a lot of reward.
That's a lot of lost toenails, isn't it, I think? Here's the big question, though, the massive question. And there was an elephant in the room, and the older you get, there's always going to be this elephant in the room. It's going to be when. It's never going to be a case of if. But do you think it's right that England have moved on or will be moving on from James Anderson? That's the first question. And then do you think they've moved on in the right way as well?
I was actually really kind of disappointed that his last match was going to be at Lord's rather than Old Trafford, considering that they obviously play Sri Lanka. They have a test match against Sri Lanka at Old Trafford later in the piece. So again, it's one of those, isn't it? You always felt like it was going to be soon. The inevitable coming soon, especially after obviously Broad retiring last year. But I would have really liked it for it to be on more of his terms rather than the ECB management kind of deciding that it was going to be this Lord's Test. And don't get me wrong, it will be incredibly special. And obviously he made his debut at Lord's, and then to go out and finish at Lord's is no mean feat in itself. But as we mentioned, all the numbers speak for themselves, and it is well and truly an end of an era with both Jimmy and Broady off the cards in Test match cricket. And I think it's good that they've obviously brought a couple new faces in, or people that are less experienced in the Test match arena, because ultimately there is a future and bedding of new Test seam stars that we need to get some overs into at the end of the day, and try and really compete and show their class on the international stage. So I am a bit sad that he didn't get to kind of make the decision on his own terms.
Yeah, it's a really romantic way of looking at it, isn't it? Like, it's not the business way of looking at it, I think, is to kind of go, I think it's probably time that the old boy takes retirement now, because it's starting to get a bit stinky in the office, and actually it's not really kind of the greatest image for what we're trying to achieve right now. But I never ever got the impression that James Anderson was gatekeeping anybody from that side. He was always there on merit, and I want to live in a world that nobody was picked for sentimental value. They were picked because they were considered to be the best option for England at that time. And I think what we've seen anyway, and what we'll speak about a little bit later with some of the numbers that some of the other players that are in this squad have contributed, James Anderson's return to county championship cricket, and as I said, for the first time in 116 days, and he's turned up and he's taken 7 for against Notts. Like, that to me says, well, I'm still one of the very best options that you've got available to you right now. And I think that's kind of hard. And I think this potentially is a complete no, or there's genuine topic for conversation here. If at the end of this Lord's Test match, whatever happens, James Anderson sits down in the press conference and says, "Thanks very much, cricket. You've been amazing to me. I've loved playing, and I'm going to walk off into the sunset, and I'm never going to play professional cricket again." That completely kills this next point. If James Anderson says, "No, I do want to go and play for Lancs," and I know there's no championship cricket now until the end of August, September, because we've got the Blast, then the 100 and the One Day Cup. And I'm not going to say he's going to turn in the One Day Cup for Lancashire, but you never know, he might do. But if he turns up in August, end of August, for whoever Lancs have got, turns up, takes fifer, are we going to have conversations of, well, the blokes that they've replaced him with are rubbish? Because nobody's going to emulate what James Anderson has done. And if he goes back to Lancs and keeps playing and keeps taking wickets, which he will, there's always going to be that conversation of going, oh, why aren't we picking James Anderson?
And people will be crying out for the quickest retirement reversal ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right in terms of that, the class and the ability that he still possesses. And I'm very much in the camp with you that people shouldn't be picked on sentiment or whatever. So if he still is one of the best seamers that can fit into this England Test team for whatever case, then surely you'd still want him to play. Even more sickening if he was turning out and getting fifers and tenthers every week for Lancs. But we'll see how that one develops, I guess.
And particularly if England are struggling to bowl teams out, which I don't think they will do when they're at home, because I think the conditions will be set up in such a way, and also respectfully to the West Indies and Sri Lanka, they're not the two strongest opponents in world cricket, and I don't necessarily think England are going to be struggling to pick up 20 wickets in these 6 Test matches. But if it was a South Africa or an India or a New Zealand or an Australia, for example, and you've got one of the new guys, Pennington, Potts, Atkinson, getting flogged around the oval at 5 or 6 and over, and you know that even if Anderson's not taking wickets, you know he's only going at 2s, such an easy kind of conversation in the pub with your mate going, why the bloody hell aren't they picking him? And it puts a lot of pressure on the other blokes that they're going to pick instead. But we do need to move on. And that's the reality of the situation. And England have announced their squad for the first 2 tests. We're going to talk about the probable 11s. I would imagine they're going to be fairly similar between the two of ours, but there might be a bit of discrepancy, certainly when you get down to the bowlers. I think the batters pretty much pick themselves. But Harry Brooks, Zach Crawley, Ben Duckett, Dan Lawrence, Ollie Pope, Joe Root, Jamie Smith, Ben Stokes, Chris Wokes, James Anderson, Gus Atkinson, Dylan Pennington, Matt Potts, and Shoaib Bashir. Jamie Smith will make his Test debut. Chris Wokes returns from injury / the wilderness. Shoaib Bashir, he's in the squad ahead of his Somerset bowling counterpart Jack Leach and, of course, Tom Hartley. And Dylan Pennington is into the squad for the first time, having had a pretty successful start to the year since he's moved from Worcester to Notts. What's your starting 11? Lords, who are you picking?
Yeah, so you've got Crawley and Duckett, haven't you? And then you've got, Pope, Root, Brooke, Stokes. Then we're into Jamie Smith. He's in there somewhere. I'm really excited.
The same as you.
I'm really excited to see how he goes. To be honest, obviously he scored 100 in his last first class game as well before having his little break from the Blast and in preparation for this test. I've seen him live a couple of times and I've been nothing but impressed with James Smith. So I'm really pleased that he's been given the opportunity, albeit to the detriment of his Surrey counterpart Ben Folkes, and also obviously no Bairstow. And then you're into the bowlers, aren't you? So Wokes, obviously he comes in there at 8, is it? I think, if my counting does me right. I think Potts will play. We've seen him in Test Match Arena before. He hasn't had a brilliant championship by his kind of standards that I'm sure he holds himself to, but he's done well at Lords before against New Zealand, I believe. And yes, he is promising. I'd like to see Pennington play. I would like to see him get his debut. I think he's been brilliant in the championship as well. Like there was definitely some stat flying around about the number of wickets that he's kind of taken, either caught behind or caught in the slips or LBW, like all genuine red ball dismissals, which is always pleasing, and he's got a bit of extra pace and bounce. And then I guess it's either one of and then I guess we need Bashir, don't we? We need him probably playing as a spinner.
So you're not picking Anderson?
Oh shite! No, obviously Anderson plays.
Well, Joey.
The three that miss out in this first test, you would imagine, would be Lawrence, Atkinson, and maybe another seamer then. Maybe Potts then? Maybe Potts misses out the first one.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Pennington might play. It could be Pennington. But yeah, the seam attack is going to be Wokes, Anderson. Wokes, Anderson, and then one of the debutants, Pennington, Atkinson, and someone else. Gosh, I've done that so terribly. It was going well until number 8.
It really was. It really was. And you're normally so well prepared for these things. That might have been the worst shot that you've played on the podcast so far, I reckon. Complete agreement with you with regards to the top 7, though. Crawley, Duckett, Pope, Root, Brooks, Stokes, Smith. They pick themselves. Woke's at 8. He's in the squad. I can't see that he's been brought into that squad when you look at the other bowlers to start with. Having not played cricket since the Ashes, Test cricket since the Ashes last year, that he isn't in that squad to play. So, and we know how good he is at Lords as well, both with bat and ball. It's a bit of a cheat code, isn't it? But that said, he's taken 1 wicket in 4 innings for Warwickshire with the ball in his return in the championship this summer. So it's not exactly like writing headlines in Birmingham about Chris Wokes. I think Potts plays because I think he's probably the one that Stokes will have a little bit more to lean on with regards to a bit of extra experience than Pennington and Atkinson. I want England to pick a spinner because I think sometimes you can go into games without them and you end up getting a bit stuck if the pitch does turn or the West Indies bat for slightly longer than what maybe they think they might if the pitch is a bit green. Obviously, if it is mega cloudy and it's like greener than like Shrek's used hanky or whatever, then there's a chance to kind of use a Pennington or an Atkinson to chuck in there as well. And then, of course, Anderson plays. But yeah, Wokes has to play because he has not been brought into that squad for 2 test matches to run drinks at Lords. So he plays at 8. And I'd like to see Bashir play, but could see a world that England kind of go, well, Root can bowl a bit of spin, so we'll be all right with just him.
Yeah, I think Bashir probably does play, doesn't he? He's again this Chris Wokes is taking over the mantle from Anderson in terms of leading the attack after this Test match, and then the rest of the bowling attack, not just the seam unit, is relatively inexperienced. But we obviously saw how promising Bashir was in India and how. You've seen clips going around on Twitter of him and everything like that. He's got a promising career ahead of him. Were you surprised that they didn't include Leach?
I was, and even more surprised the fact that Shoaib Bashir couldn't get a game at Somerset and had to go on loan to Worcester. But Somerset wanted to pick Jack Leach because they felt he was their better spinner and allowed Bashir to go on loan rather than the other way around, which I found quite interesting. But yeah, I don't think Tom Hartley's had a great return to the UK. He's obviously been competing for spots with Nathan Lyon, which is what we spoke about at the end of that India tour, that it was going to be difficult to fit them both in. And yeah, I mean, Bashir, Leach, it's probably not a great deal in it, I wouldn't have thought, with regards to what you get from either of them. Leach has had a pretty good career, but I think he's probably more well-known in England ranks for that one not out at Headingley rather than what he's been able to achieve with the ball. And Bashir's pretty exciting with what he might have ahead of him. So, yeah, I don't mind it. Yeah. I don't mind it at all. The West Indies squad, that's been announced. And we spoke with Josh De Silva, didn't we, a while ago whilst he was sat on his boat in Trinidad. And he's in the squad, which is great. And it was obviously really good to have a chat with him and listen to his thoughts about West Indies cricket and kind of future aspirations in this tour in particular. They've had one warm-up game. They played the County Select 11 at Beckenham, which I think is a little bit of false advertising when you look at it. Like the County Select 11 to me says that's the best 11 county players that don't make an England team. And respectfully to all of them, that wasn't the case. And I don't know how much of a warm-up it was for the West Indies. Cavem Hodge, 112. Alec Athanasi, 74, 66 not out. The worry for the West Indies, they managed to take 6 wickets in 2 innings against that Select 11, which included a bunch of players that aren't first-choice picks in County 11 sides. Obviously, it clashed with a round of Championship cricket, didn't make it easy. With that squad for the West Indies, I dropped you a WhatsApp and just kind of said we should probably have a couple of key players that we're looking forward to seeing and how we think they're going to go. Who are your 2 that you're looking for or looking at in that West Indies squad? Going, yeah, they could be game winners. They could be game changers for the Windies.
I think the first place to start is obviously probably in the bowling department. I think that's where, if the West Indies are going to have success, you'd think it's more likely to be with the ball, especially in English conditions. And we saw what Shamar Joseph can do in Australia and kind of how exciting his pace and everything that he possesses is. As well as, do you know what? I am intrigued to see how Jayden Seales goes. We saw him for Sussex in his stint. After his stint with them, he was joint or second leading wicket taker in Division 2 for Sussex, and he seemed to be exciting, really challenging for the county players on the circuit, and picked up, I think it was 24 wickets in his little stint with Sussex. So I'm excited to if he plays, I'm excited to see how he goes.
Yeah, so he was my first one as well that I noted out. So I've got nothing really more insightful to say about Jayden Seales other than what you've already said, to be honest with you. The only thing I had extra was the fact he took 11 wickets against England in 2022 in the West Indies on those absolute pancake pitches that they prepared for those first 2 tests, and 4 for 79 in Antigua on one of those pancakes. I do think there's a world that he doesn't even play. You'd think Kemar Roach plays. You'd think Alzari Joseph plays. And then at that point there, you're potentially looking at kind of a last place shootout between Shamar Joseph, who obviously rewrote the headlines at Brisbane, and between Jayden Seales. Seales has the advantage of the fact that he's played red ball cricket in the UK this summer. And I think if I was picking that 11, I'd pick Jayden Seales over Shamar Joseph. But it does feel like they're kind of neck and neck as to which one of those 2 gets picked. My other one to watch, and I'm hopeful that this one might be a little bit different to yours, but is Cavem Hodge, the guy that scored 112 at Beckenham. He's 31 years old from Dominica. I like the fact that they've picked guys that are a little bit more experienced, that have played in the first class setup in the West Indies. He's played 63 matches. He's got 5 first class hundreds. The only 2 tests he's played were both against Australia, which included a 71 in that Brisbane test match. I've never really seen him play. I don't know that much about him, and I'm basing it all on numbers. But as I say, I like the fact that we're talking about an experienced guy, and I assume he'll be in the middle order rather than kind of a team of West Indies of 21 to 25-year-olds and kind of looking at a bunch of tearaways that might be interested in Elf Bar or something like that. But yeah, I like the selection of Hodge.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's kind of got himself used to the cooler conditions over here with that 100 at Beckenham. Beckenham is probably a nice place you wanna bat. It's pretty flat there. I've played there a few times. One thing I will say, Roach is injured, isn't he? Didn't he get like some kind of knee injury?
Did he?
I think he's had to pull out, which is quite sad actually, because I remember when Jimmy announced his retirement, he came out and said that he was keen to just like upset it, wasn't he? And he's done so well for Surrey over the past however many years in the Championship. So yeah, I think the veteran has had to be ruled out. Although not quite as much of a veteran as Jimmy, obviously. I think he's got a knee injury. Yes, he has. So yeah, it will be quite a youngish bowling attack for the West Indies, but they're always exciting to watch, aren't they?
They are indeed. Have you got another player that you're looking at, or was it just Jaden Seals was your
And
pick?
Shamar Joseph, obviously.
Yeah, just the two of them.
Yeah, I feel like that extra pace that he packs. Pace is always a threat, no matter where you're playing, and obviously he showed that down under, didn't he? I'm excited to see him. Also, I'm thinking back to obviously Joffre when he was bowling at Lords against Steve Smith. I would like to see Shamar Joseph challenging our batters a bit like that. That'd be quite exciting.
Well, I think he probably plays now that I've learnt that Kemar Roach is cooked. Then yes, I would imagine it's Sales and Shamar Joseph, which is good. Finally, just to round off the podcast, a shorter one. We're trying something different really with the podcasts, and hopefully you like them. If you don't, provide feedback via the form of YouTube comments and let us know what you think about things. But and finally, of course, if you've enjoyed it as well, which is probably the more important thing to talk about rather than just the negativity of if you haven't liked it. But there is a Patreon and you can support the podcast if you'd like to do so. There's a link in the description of the video and you can get in contact with us and you can do all kinds of other things. But we can't do anything like England are going to win 3-0 and they're going to beat Serbia in the semi-finals, and we can't say that Spain are going to beat Germany and all this other stuff. But what we can do is obviously have a prediction for the series scoreline. As I said, 3 tests: Lords, Trent Bridge, Edgbaston. Series score, Joe Gardner, what are you going for? And break it down as well if you want. Give me test by test.
I wish I could just wholeheartedly say 3-0. I wish I could, but I feel like the weather is going to probably interrupt something along the way. So that's going to lead me to saying 2-0 England. I think hopefully this break from Test match cricket has refreshed them, come back together as a group, high energy, few new faces kicking around. Jimmy's final test. He's gonna do well at Lords. If he doesn't take 7 wickets at least in the match, I will be disappointed. One of those is going to be a fifer I'm not sure what day it will be on, but I reckon he's going to get a fifer and take at least 7 wickets in his final test, which would leave him 1 short of being on par with Shane Warne, if my memory serves me right from you mentioning at the top end of the podcast. I think Dylan Pennington is going to do well when he makes his debut. Obviously, my miscalculation in sorting the team out for the first test. He probably isn't going to play until the second test, is he? Trent Bridge is now home ground. Second test, I think he'll go well there. Probably produce some kind of match-winning spell and get England the dub. From a batting perspective, I really want Ollie Pope to do well. He's struggled, hasn't he, in the Championship? What we've seen of him this summer so far. I've kept him in my fantasy cricket team the whole time, just banking on the fact that he's too good a player to keep him down for long, and just hasn't returned for me. So I'm banking on the fact that he's going to have a good series and get back amongst the runs. They're my hot takes, and I think 2-0 because I feel like the weather might affect it.
I like it. I'm saying 2-1 England. I'm going to say England can win the first 2, Lords and Notts, and then the West Indies will fight back at Edgbaston. I don't think, as you said, we can't sit here and say 3-0 England because I think that'd be incredibly disrespectful, and I think they will, and I think they will get with this batting lineup England have got. I think, and the pace and the skill that they've got with the ball, I think they'll bowl England out pretty cheaply once in this series because there isn't much stick in that England top 6, is there? Top 7, so they'll get through them. I don't think it matters if there's a day lost to rain because I think England will just make the running and try and catch up with it. I don't think it will. I think they could play like 3-4 day test matches and still back themselves to get results. Who do I think is going to go particularly well? I genuinely, I'm going to double down on Jaden Seals. I'm going to say that kind of warm up with Sussex is going to do him wonders. I think he's going to go really well. I think from an England perspective, it's a bit of low hanging fruit, isn't it? But I reckon this summer, I think we're going to see the very, very best of Joe Root again with the cricket bat. I think he's having a big year against the West Indies and Sri Lanka. So there we go. That's the podcast. 35 minutes, done and dusted, in and out. Wham, bam. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for listening. Joe, thanks for your time. Good luck this week. You're off to York to play against, I assume, the Northern Diamonds.
Yeah, the Northern Diamonds.
Good knowledge. Good knowledge. And you've got 2 more Rachel Hayhoe Flint games to go in this block, right?
Yes. So, yeah, Wednesday at York against Diamonds, and then to Beckenham on Sunday against the Stars.
Happy days. Happy days. Well, if you want to find out more, make sure you follow the Sunrisers, follow Jo Gardner on her socials. And if you really kind of lose the will to live and you want to hear some dodgy takes about cricket, you can come and follow me as well. So thanks for listening, Joe. Thanks for your time. And we will be back on somewhen, because we're having a chat with a guy called Jimmy O'Brien, who's the face of John Boy, who was one of the ICC commentators at the World Cup. And we've got some questions to ask him about what cricket looks like in America and what kind of legacy it might leave and things like that. So hopefully you're looking forward to that one, and we'll see you then.